Applying for college is tough. For American students, it means countless hours filling out applications, writing essays, and anxiously waiting for those acceptance letters. But for students from Iran, admission is only the beginning. Imagine this. You've been accepted to your dream school in the United States. But before you can set foot on campus, you have to navigate a maze of visa restrictions, attend interviews in neighboring countries, and wait months for approval. All of this, while political tensions and changing U.S. policies add further uncertainty. This is reality for Iranian students. According to the U.S. Virtual Embassy Iran, the number of Iranian students studying in American universities has steadily grown, making Iran now rank 22nd among the top 25 places of origin for international students. Over the past decade, the number of Iranian students studying at Ohio State has fluctuated, but steadily increased, from just 29 in 2013 to 97 this year. In reporting this story, the Lantern reached out to several Iranian students to better understand their experiences. However, none were willing to speak on the record, even anonymously, over fears of how their story could impact their immigration status, especially with the war in Gaza raising tensions and uncertainty over how a second Trump administration might change U.S. immigration policies. While we could not feature their voices directly, we spoke with experts about the challenges they face. The first of which is going through the visa process in a country without a U.S. embassy.
Students from Iran, where the United States does not have an embassy, have to go outside of Iran to apply for their student visa, typically to Turkey or maybe Dubai in the UAE, neighboring countries where the US has a presence. And they can apply for a student visa there and then use that to travel to the United States. Those visas will typically be limited both to single entry use and give them a much shorter period of time during which they can travel to the US, and they can only use it that one time. Now, once they're here, they can stay for as long as their program of study lasts, which might be several years. For those students, it means that when they leave the United States, if they want to come back, even if they just go home for summer break, for example, they'll have to begin the process again, apply for a new visa before they can return to the US. They might also face additional hurdles in their eligibility. National security concerns, for example, related to perhaps prior military service, which is compulsory for many people in Iran, or even their area of study. Students from Iran are not permitted to come to the United States to study nuclear engineering, for example. So there are definitely limitations for students from different countries for reasons determined by the US government, typically related to national security.
The recent tensions surrounding the war scare of 2019 and 20, the covert operations the U.S. perhaps has engaged in to disrupt the Iranian nuclear development, Iran's partnership, if not alliance, with other powers like China and Russia and North Korea, all of those give grounds for the United States to be very careful, at least in the judgment of U.S. foreign policy officials, to be very careful in the way Iranian aspiring travelers would be screened. The U.S., in theory, looks carefully at all foreign travelers who are asking for visas to come to the United States or for permission to immigrate into the United States. But it's probably fair to say that the security standards pertaining to applicants from Iran these days are going to be a little higher and a little more thoroughly investigated and enforced than applicants from other countries without that history of tension in the relationship with Washington. The modern relationship between the U.S. and Iran reaches back to the World War II period. After the war, it became an ally of the United States under the leadership of a young king called Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. For 26 years thereafter, U.S.-Iranian relations were actually quite good. But then came the Iran Revolution of 1979, which was violent and elevated to prominence an extremely nationalistic and extremely conservative religious cleric named the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini overthrew the Shah, dismantled his regime, and established the Islamic Republic of Iran, with several axes to grind, not only against the Shah's royalist regime, but also against the United States that had put him back in power and sustained him through that alliance ever since. So ever since 1979, the U.S.-Iran relationship has been generally frosty. In the early years came the infamous Iran hostage crisis, when Iran seized 52 hostages from U.S. personnel at the embassy in Tehran and held them for more than a year in captivity. The embassy was closed after the hostage crisis and has not opened since. The U.S. currently does not maintain diplomatic relations with Iran. There is a way for Iranian citizens to communicate with the U.S. government, and that would be through a U.S. embassy in some other country.
To further add to that difficulty, U.S. immigration policies are ever changing, making the process even harder to navigate.
From one administration to the next can alter significantly policies about how willing the federal government is to grant a student visa. The law itself does not change from year to year or even president to president, but the way that law is applied can and does change. And so what we saw under the first Trump administration was that the number of foreign students studying at universities across the United States dropped rather substantially. In part, that was because of the general political climate that really tarred migrants, and that folks are not particularly excited about participating in, but also because the bureaucratic process that prospective foreign students in the United States have to navigate simply became more onerous. And we're talking about young people who not only have options, but who have already proven themselves to be rather diligent in exploring options. And so many of those folks we see ended up in other parts of the world, in other countries, pursuing their educational aspirations. The number of foreign students did start to go up under the Biden administration. We'll, of course, see what policies, if any, the Trump administration imposes the second time around. But it is, of course, always possible to request more evidence of, say, financial ability, to be more stringent about granting an extension of a visa after graduation. Quick changes in policies are also something that creates instability that for many people is not desirable. For example, during the first Trump administration, when the travel ban was announced early in President Trump's tenure, all of a sudden people who had gone through that process were being told they could not come to the United States. That's a level of instability that most of us are not particularly interested in experiencing. And certainly people who have options and have dreams for getting their educational careers started or continuing those educational careers, for folks like that, the more wrenches that the federal government throws in their path, the more likely that they're going to think hard about beginning their educational careers, perhaps even their professional careers outside of the United States.
President Trump is, to a certain degree, unpredictable. He prides himself on having something of a mercurial nature, where he likes to present surprise decisions or unconventional approaches to foreign policy. He also prides himself on being a deal maker and aspires to prove his reputation as an astute deal maker by formulating brilliant breakthrough solutions to longstanding problems. All of that combined means that the possibility of some kind of breakthrough improvement of U.S.-Iranian relations is not an impossibility. It's not unthinkable, as it might have been for a previous U.S. president. Now, on the other hand, we do have a record of Donald Trump's time in the White House from 2017 to 2021. I think it's reasonable to anticipate that a second Trump administration might have a lot of continuity with the first Trump administration. And the record of Donald Trump's interaction with Iran during his first term is one in which that conservative hawkishness was very much on display, and there was very little inclination shown for making any kind of compromise or concession with Iran, even if that seemed to be the best path toward peace. Trump was willing to risk war in order to defend what he considered America's vital conservative national interests. So I would expect ongoing conflict over the next 4 years between the United States and Iran, more than I would expect any kind of a sudden breakthrough.
While tension and conflict between governments may impact immigration policies, Iranian students still choose to come to the United States to pursue an education. Just like their fellow Ohio State students, they come here looking for a college education and a chance to build a brighter future for both themselves and their communities.
There's an old saying about the place of the United States in the world, and that is that much of the world doesn't like the U.S. government, but most of the world actually likes the American people. And I think that goes both ways. I think if Americans met Iranians on a person-to-person basis with politics suspended, the two groups would find each other quite likable or quite cordial.
Most of the students that I meet with have excellent immigration cases. The vast majority of my clients, students here at Ohio State, have squeaky clean records. They entered the country legally with usually a student visa. They are highly qualified future employees, and they don't present any kinds of admissibility concerns along the lines of crime or national security or things like that. So I'm very fortunate in that most of the students that I work with have excellent resumes and more options than a lot of other people who are seeking immigration benefits.
This has been Carter Colai with The Lantern.